Hi guys, it's Epictalez back again, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Through some of my connections, I pulled some strings and I was able to get a professor of creative writing to answer some questions I feel like book readers and writers would love to get answered. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you guys for coming today to talk. I feel it only makes sense that I introduce the both of you since the both of you haven't met each other. The person we're interviewing today, his name is Ray. He's a professor of creative writing, and he's been doing that for a number of years. This is Andrew. A couple days ago, I reached out to him. I was like, yo, I know this UBC professor. I've asked him. He was down to do an interview with us where we can just ask him questions basically that I feel like readers and writers will be interested in.
So I do actually have a question. Like I said, I took a creative writing class back in high school. And one of the exercises that we had to do was he would either put a sentence on the board or he would put an object in front of us. It could be like a lemon. It could be like a tiny miniature Ferris wheel, whatever. He would then have us stare at it for 30 seconds, and then he would start a 5-minute timer. And then from that, we had to freeform, nonstop write whatever came to our mind. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a great exercise for creative writing, and why?
Like, there are two things that are interesting about that. The first one is the 30 seconds, that you have to spend just staring at the thing. Which makes me think that it's kind of like, how would the exercise be different if the teacher just said, right, like as soon as I put this lemon right in front of you, or I've written out this thing, right straight away. And I think that on one hand, there's that kind of like, okay, you're not just jumping onto the very first thing that comes to your mind. Instead, you're kind of like looking at this lemon, you're thinking to yourself like, okay, how's this weird in a way that like 29 seconds into it, I wouldn't have seen like 5 seconds into it or something. So there's that kind of like shaking you outside of yourself as a writer. But then there's that kind of like, okay, start. And you just pour it all out, stream of consciousness, whatever, which is the opposite of that. It's kind of like you don't deliberate, you don't pause to think about it, you just pour it all out. And that kind of tension between those two things, between like you have to sit and you have to reflect on it to the point where it's kind of like a twist, another twist, something unfamiliar, something like that. And on the other hand, kind of like, okay, you're jumping right into it, you're sinking and swimming, you're like, treading water. It makes me think about surrealist exercises where part of it was attempting to tap into your subconscious. And that was attempting to remove the kind of barriers that we have in everyday life. It's interesting that there are these two things that are trying to keep you from just doing the habitual thing. It's a really interesting exercise for those two reasons.
Someone said like how to write a good story. You write a bad story and then you fix it. You need to like switch up the editor in your brain, the part of your brain that wants everything to be perfect and elaborate, and just throw it all out on the paper and carve it out into something more understandable.
It actually just made me think of something that I had to do in college. I had to write a paper on a statue, and literally I had to do an art analysis on the whole thing, and I only had 8,000 words and I needed, I think, another 12. And so literally I just wrote it. I then went back and had to fix it. And a lot of it was just exposition.
Wow. But like in your own words, like Ray, what is so good about Hemingway's writing that you feel like it's good for authors just starting up and authors need to adapt more into their writing?
First off, I should say that Hemingway for me is not the be all and end all of writing. I think that there are tons of things that writers might not be trying to go for that Hemingway might be able to lead them into something that the writing is not trying to do. But I do think that for a lot of writers, we love writing. And one of the ways in which we love writing is that it comes out at the level of the sentence. Like our sentences can become immensely poetic. And I say this as someone who, for a long time, very strongly identified as a poet and loved language. I admired reading the work of novelists or fiction writers who were very, very poetic. That is not what Hemingway is trying to do. What Hemingway is trying to do is express everything in such a restrained way that it seems that everything is just what happens. It's very difficult to kind of like get into the interiority of what the characters might be thinking about. I think that on one hand, like there's something very, very masculine, macho, what happens on the surface, we fall in love with our characters, we fall in love with the language. It's very tempting, I think, for us to write out everything because we want to communicate to the reader exactly all the richness that we feel. And one of the things that I think Hemingway's style offers a kind of alternative for, or an antidote for, is that everything is so reserved, everything is so suppressed, that like we're compelled as readers to read into it.
This
What?
reminds me of Malazan, Book of the Fallen. There's barely any exposition at all.
Steve Erickson has gone on the record because some of his characters are hundreds of thousands of years old. And so literally he will not give you their inner monologue because as a human, he doesn't have that frame of mind. He couldn't possibly plumb the depth of somebody who is centuries or millennia old like that. And so he lets the character's actions speak, but will never actually give you the inner monologue.
He
And I
pulls
think
it
that's
off
what you're
brilliantly,
talking
yeah.
about.
It's just action, action, action. And like in the Malazan community, right, it's interesting to see how differently like every single person that reads it interprets every character. And that is such an interesting
That's
dynamic.
interesting.
Unlike someone like Joe Abercrombie that, oh my God, he's the one author that does exposition. I can't tell him not to do it because look at characters like Sandan Glockter and Logan.
It's an interesting series for sure, mainly because as many pages as there are, not a lot is happening. The series could easily be one book shorter, but the character work is so amazing that someone could be holding the book to you and not tell you who's speaking, but read the character's dialogue, and you would know who that character is. I have kind of an interesting question, and it's a sticky one, so I kind of want to see
Awesome.
how you're going to come out of it. Essentially, what I wanted to ask you is when does inspiration cross into plagiarism?
So in terms of inspiration versus plagiarism, there's one thing that I want to say first. Stealing depends on who's doing the stealing and who's being stolen from. So let's think about Robin Hood. You know, when we hear Robin Hood, there's a reason why Robin Hood is a certain kind of hero, and that's everything to do with power. You know, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Right? It's like if you steal from the poor and you give to the rich, I mean, that's just like taxes these days. You know, there's obviously something different between that and something that we would say like, okay, there's something heroic about this. This is from the point of view of kind of like the entire great artist steal type shtick. I think that's too easy to say, but there's also something kind of heroic and something romantic about that idea. I would say every writer has to think about what they're drawing from. This is my answer. It depends. Are you a Robin Hood or are you just taxes?
That's a good line.
That's
Are you Robin Hood or are you just taxes?
I know, right? I felt that line. Speaking of which, as a creative writing professor, if you were going to give 5 authors that aspiring writers should learn technical skills of writing, which writers would you tell them to like gain inspiration from and why?
I would say that it really, really depends on the writer. The reason why is because I would give like a different top 5 to whichever writer I was reading their work. Hemmingway, for someone who like luxuriates in the language, you know, presenting something that is an antidote to that. Have either of you ever read Anne Carson?
I have not.
Okay,
No.
Let's see. So Anne Carson is a poet, as well as kind of like an experimental writer. One of the things that she wrote was a novel in verse called Autobiography of Red. It's beautiful, you know, it's poetic language, but it's so subtle. You know, it's not trying to hammer you over the head with its language. Instead, it's about seeing something from a different angle in such a way that it's like you can get that in 2 words. It explodes in your face because it's kind of like, wow, 2 words? You just captured something that was an entirely new point of view, but she just leaves it and she keeps on going. It's so understated and it's powerful for that reason. And Autobiography of Red is magic realism. It's fantastical. And it's like Greek myth, but it's today, you know. It's the reason why magic realism is interesting from the point of view of fantasy writing. Imagine you're living in a time or an era in which everything is so fucked up that it feels surreal and absurd. But the thing is that this is everyday life. And my gosh, we just have been living through this a period of time. At first, things felt fucked up. Then things feel kind of normal, but also fucked up. And like, it's just absurd, surreal. Like you can't believe you're reading the news, you know? Imagine being in that kind of era. What kind of literature could accurately reflect that era? And what it is got truth being stranger than fiction. But you got to figure out what kind of fiction is able to convey that. And it's going to seem like fantastical. It's going to seem magical. It's going to seem absurd. It's going to seem surreal, you know? But that's really what our era is.
That reminds me of grimdark fantasy.
Yes, like yes.
That's Prince of Thorns through and through.
Ooh, Prince of Thorns. Oh, I love that. I like
Prince of Thorns
recently
by Mark Lawrence.
yeah.
It's funny because it starts out so messed up, and then you get used to it. But it doesn't stop being messed up.
Yeah.
You're just continuing and you're in this, and it's just so weird. And it is set in a future state.
So the book that had that effect on me, right, was War of the Spider Queen. And the fact that the rules in that world were completely different from the rules I'm used to in reading books and even in reality, I was like, I just got drawn in so much.
Let me actually try to turn the tables a bit and pose to both of you a question.
Okay.
So one of the things that I believe is that I think that the most important fantasy that is going to be written in our era is going to be fantasy that feels truer to our present world as we know it and help us understand it more deeply because it feels truer than capital L, the kind of literary work that is being pumped out by these institutions.
The elite writers that write boring books that nobody actually cares about.
Exactly.
So what comes to mind for me when you say this is, have you read anything by Sir Terry Pratchett?
Yeah.
A million years ago.
You know how like sometimes real life is stranger than fiction, and so he takes a fantasy story, puts the absurd on it. Through that absurdity, you learn more about the human condition. It's a book that you take something with you once you flip the final page.
You mentioned how society sometimes is stranger than fiction. And part of the reason why that is sometimes is because there are underlying things that people are aware of, but they will not speak about because it's a taboo or they are trying to avoid being socially isolated. But then in a book, you can write about it and explore a topic or an idea of things that are happening. And someone can read that book privately and become more emotionally informed about the topic. For instance, right now, Game of Thrones, right? Touching on subjects like incest and talking about subjects like addressing things that we are all aware about, but we can't talk about it to like a random person we meet on the street, for instance. So you find yourself asking your questions, okay, if this was how I felt about this topic and I was in this situation, would I have acted differently?
My gosh. I think there's something really important about that question about would we have acted differently, and the reason why I say that is because, and this has everything to do with like speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, as opposed to like literary fiction. And the reason why is because it takes us as readers, plunks us in a different world that operates under different rules, different conditions, and all that kind of stuff. It puts people through difficult decisions that they have to make. If they make them differently or ways that make us go like, like that, then it asks us like, would we have made that same decision? If you took me and you plunked me down in that kind of world conditions, I would have behaved like totally like blah, 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 blah.
I would have been a good person.
Exactly. And it's not a fantasy world. It's not something that's absolutely separate from the world that we know. Yeah. So when we see people behaving like horribly or something like that within Game of Thrones or some other fantasy world, and we're wondering to ourselves, it's like we're putting ourselves into that imaginative position of would we have done the same? Because that's something that I would have to grapple with. And Andrew, you were saying before, the thing about Pratchett is that you leave the story with something. And to me, what that says is that fantasy doesn't have to be escapist. And I think that for people who dismiss fantasy, it's very easy to say something like, well, it's escapist, as if that ends the story right there. Sure, we turn to fantasy like, let's say sometimes an antidote from real life or something like that. But when we walk away, the way that you describe it with you and Pratchett, it's like that comes with us, into the everyday world, into real life. It changes us.
Correct. That really gets me where I live because mainly I read 95% fantasy. And when people come down on fantasy can be used to express an idea that may be taboo in the real world. And it can be masked in a way that it's still being presented to you in a very palatable way. You can still learn from it and address certain life issues or world issues that you can then learn from. And fantasy can not only teach you about yourself, but it can also teach you about others. Them is in Canada, I'm in the United States. I wouldn't usually know how to speak to somebody who's in Nigeria, where you're from, or, you know, there are cultural differences there. But through my fantasy reading, I know how to interact with people who are different than me, people who have a different frame of reference than I do.
And honestly, like, I feel like I need to say this, meeting you guys, at the time I met you guys, I've never met a group of people very instantly. I can just tell we're going to get along and we're flowing. And the medium of our communication is our love of fantasy and our appreciation of creativity in writing form. You know, what he's alluding to there is very, very true.
Okay, two things.
He got excited.
Okay. So the thing is that
as you can clearly see, I'm still editing the video. Part 2 will be coming out soon. If you want to watch part 2, just like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know down in the description. In the meantime, I want you to check out Andrew's channel. Quality, good stuff. If you want to have a conversation with any of us about the topic we're having today, you can check out our Discord channel. Link is in the description. One of the reasons why this video is so dear to me is because I'm also a writer. Check out my story on WattPad. Every week I'll be uploading new episodes. For now, I just have the prologue. Peace.
Just do it! Yes, you can!